Hello and welcome to Foundersuite's onboarding webinar. I'm going to show you some tips and tactics for using Foundersuite to efficiently raise capital. Let's jump in. What is Foundersuite? Very briefly, it's a set of tools for raising capital. I used to work in investment banking many years ago, worked with a couple hundred startups, helping them raise capital, also worked with a bunch of venture funds, and launched Foundersuite going on like 9 years. We've been around for a little while, kind of one of the OGs in this space. I think we were the first ones to come out with an investor CRM for managing a pipeline. But basically, Foundersuite is a collection of tools to help you raise capital more efficiently. It's 7 different tools. We have an investor database to help find investors, to build a prospect list or investor lead list. We have an investor CRM, which is what you're looking at here, to manage a pipeline of investors, all the activities, to-dos, tasks, all that good stuff. We have what I call our marketing tools. So pitch deck hosting, investor updates, and email tools. This is for sending out your deck, sending out follow-up emails, sending out like a monthly update to stay top of mind with investors. And then we have a data room to manage your due diligence, all the documents and things like that. And then there are a few other things like our training center, docs and templates, Founders Market, which we'll get into here. But let's just start with some basics. So when you first get into Foundersuite, one of the first things I like to do is actually to configure the columns to match your own workflow. It comes with a standard set of columns, but I like to add some custom columns. And I really like to get granular, kind of thinking about each step of my fundraise. So I have added columns like sent pitch deck, viewed deck, responded, set up pitch meeting, diligence, things like that. And the reason I like to have it really granular like this is then when I'm using like the send email tool, for example, to do follow-ups, I can send a specific email to certain columns. So if I want to send an email to everyone who I sent the deck and who viewed it, but maybe they haven't yet responded, I could send them an email. So everyone in this column. Or everyone who's responded but maybe hasn't moved forward to a pitch meeting, I could send all these guys a specific email, kind of nudging them along through my process. So that's one thing to start with, is setting up your columns, and you can do that over here on the right. You can add columns, you can rename columns by clicking these 3 little dots. You can move columns around just by dragging them where you want. As one example, I've created a couple different versions of no. So I've got my said no, my no response, and my too early. These are all versions of no, but I kind of segment even my no's. The people who said no to me, I don't contact them anymore. But the people that either ghosted me or said, I like you, but you're too early, I still send them my company updates, my investor updates. So we'll get into that a little bit more. Another thing to do as you're setting up the account is coming over into settings. Here's where you can manage your subscription, upgrade, downgrade, add on a data room, things like that, change logos, passwords, things like that. But one of the first things I recommend doing is inviting people into your account. Anyone who potentially could help you raise capital, invite them into your account. This could be your co-founder. This could be maybe mentors or advisors. If you're part of an accelerator, why not invite some of the managing directors into your account so they can help out? One of the funding hacks is using our CRM to get your contacts, your mentors, to help you populate your CRM. So to do that, you simply click add team member, type in their name, type in their email address, hit send. They will get an email with a link. They follow the steps there, and then they'll be a member of your account. And you can always remove them as members later if you want to take them off. As a member, they can basically do everything in the account. They can add investors, edit investors, move investors around. What they can't do is upgrade, downgrade, and they also can't invite other members. So it's a pretty fully active membership. While we're here, if you're on a paid plan, silver, gold, or platinum, you can connect your email. Now, this account's already got my email connected, but why would you connect your email? A couple reasons. One is you can send out emails through the system. And You can send out batches of emails. You can also send out your pitch deck to batches of investors. You can send out your investor update. So that's pretty powerful. We're getting very, very close, like a week or two away from releasing email campaigns as a new feature. And that will let you set up email drips, automated follow-ups, things like that. So that's going to be pretty powerful. The other thing that connecting your email does is it will pull in conversations with the investors. For example, here's an investor prospect. If I go to the email tab, it will pull in those email threads with that investor. And that's kind of nice just to see, what you've been talking about with each investor. One thing that's pretty cool about that is if I turn on this toggle, share emails across the team. This is pretty, a lot of people really like this. If, let's say you're working in this account with your co-founder, if you turn this on each investor card, you'll be able to see the emails that your co-founder is having with investors, and he or she will also be able to see your email conversations. If you're working with a fundraising consultant, an advisor, or mentor, maybe you have an angel investor that's already written you a check, bring them into your account and connect this email. So you'll be able to see the email threads that your angel investor is sending out to potential VCs and those responses. We call it high visibility fundraising. It's pretty powerful. Okay, so those are a few setup tasks to start with. Next typical task is starting to populate your CRM with investors. 3 ways to do that. One is you can just add them one by one. This is useful if maybe you've been out at a conference or an event, you meet an investor, you can either search for them in our database. If we have them, we'll pull in the information we have, or you can enter the information yourself, and that will just create a new card. Second option is importing a list of investors. Many people come to Foundersuite with a list they've already started working on. If you can get that list into a spreadsheet, into an Excel file or CSV file, you can import that. I do recommend checking out this tips. The more you kind of clean up your file before importing and try and make it match the fields in our CRM, the better that import will go. But it's pretty straightforward. You click this, you click your investor list, and then the next step is you will match your columns to our fields. And this is why I say it often makes sense to clean up your spreadsheet a little bit before importing. We can always send you an import template. If you have a crazy spreadsheet, copying your data into our import template can make this process easier. So just reach out via support to get that. But it's pretty straightforward, right? Your column has an investor name, match that. Overview matches over to description, headquarters to location, so on and so forth. You've got a contact person, matches there, right? Should all be pretty straightforward. One thing that sometimes throws people off a little bit is, let's say you have their social links, their LinkedIn. So I'm going to match the LinkedIn to public page. So it's kind of a generic title, but this is their public page number 1, their Twitter or X public page number 2, personal blog number 3. And then we do have some custom fields. So if you want to bring in things that maybe we don't have as a field, you can do that here. Fund size, I'll match that as a custom field. And then you click import, give it a few minutes, and those investors you just imported will show up in the research column. So that is another way to get investors in. The third way, and perhaps the most popular, is searching our investor database. This number changes all the time because we're doing a huge update and enrichment to this investor database. We're always adding investors as well. Right now, it's actually shrank in recent days. We had 200,000. We deleted about 20-some thousand bad results. But currently, we have 181,000 investors in this database. And we've got them tagged by type of investor. Got about 100,000 angels. I think we have about 26,000 venture funds, about 3,700 family offices. For most startup founders, some of these other categories are not going to be so relevant. You would not be chasing foundations or fund of funds or endowments. Probably angel investors, angel groups, and venture capital, and maybe family offices are going to be what you're looking at there. What I recommend doing, though, is actually starting by industry. So if you're in, let's say, health, you're doing some sort of medical devices, come over to industry, start typing the first couple letters like HEAL, and you'll see we have several different types of health, wellness, senior health, mental health, health and wellness, which LOHAS, healthcare IT. So pick whatever is most relevant. I'll just pick health and wellness. Now, if I add another tag from the same category, so if I add health and wellness and digital health, this is going to expand the results. So that brought that up to about 5,570. Now, if that looks a little interesting. If I add a tag from a different category, this is going to narrow down the results. So our health and wellness went down to about 1,840. Then what I recommend doing next is kind of scrolling these results. If Wavemaker catches your eye, click on this. You can see a little bit more details about that, some deals they've done in the past, the people that work there, a couple folks there. What I recommend doing before adding them to your CRM is clicking this icon here, the little tilted 8. Go to their website and look at two things. Look at their portfolio, make sure they don't have a competing investment. If they do, just move on, don't add them to your CRM. And then also look at the team, and you want to find whoever is the most relevant partner at this fund. So, go through that, and then there are two options here. So you can either add them to your CRM. This is just going to drop them on. So let's say it was Eric. That was the most relevant. You could add 2 people. I would not recommend adding lots of people. These guys we only have 3 folks for this fund, but some bigger funds will have 20 or 30 people. You don't want to add 20 or 30 people to your CRM. You want to find and identify the right partner there that does your type of deal. But let's just say it's John and Eric, add them to my CRM. That's going to drop that card into the research column. So Wavemaker is now in my CRM in the research column. So the other thing you can do here is use our Get Intro tool. Once you click that for the first time, you will have to give it access. You can choose what to give it access to. That can be your contacts, your calendar, people you've met with, and your LinkedIn. I recommend at least adding LinkedIn. The other 2 will expand the results and make it more powerful. So the more you can add there, the better. So let's say I identified John Mackle as a good person there. I only have one path, but it will show me that path. Let me go to a different set of results to demo this a little bit better. All right, let's say I was doing something in fintech. So Boost VC catches my eye. Let me click the Get Intro. Oh yeah, okay. I guess I have more connections in the fintech space than in the healthcare space. But Adam Draper and Brayton, these are the 2 guys that are at Boost VC, and you see I have lots of connection paths there. So that's great if you have lots of connection paths to these investors. What you want to do next is scroll through the results. So Adam Draper works at Boost VC. He's over here. This is him. And these are all the people I have in common, mutual connections to Adam. And what you can see here is this is giving me a little bit of data on how I know the connector. So these folks are the connectors. This is giving me data on how I know the connector. I've met with Aaron, had conversations with him, and it's giving data on how the connector knows Adam. So these guys work together for a period of time, so that should be a pretty strong signal, although it's been several years. Or let's say Sumit. If I know Sumit pretty well, Adam Draper's venture fund invested in Sumit. That's a really strong signal. So if I know Sumit well enough, that might be a good intro path. Let's look at one more here. Okay, so Boost also invested in Anthony's company. So let's say I'm going to select him. My next little task here is it's asking Anthony for that intro to Adam. So bottom line, what is this all doing? It's helping us get those warm intros in a really efficient, kind of optimized way, right? Showing me my connection paths based on my social graph, showing me some signal strength between me, the connector, and the investor, and then facilitating that intro by basically teeing up an email to go out to my connector asking for the intro to Adam. Really powerful feature. People are finding a lot of success in this. We just launched it a couple of months ago, so it's still somewhat new. A little paint's not quite dry in all the corners, but check that out. Okay, so other tips for searching the database while we're here. You can search by investor type. You can add multiple types if you want. You can add location or industry to narrow it down. You can add location, stage to narrow it down further. One thing that's often helpful, as I mentioned, we've got these 181,000 investors tagged by type, industry, location, stage, but there's also a lot of keyword data in these. Sometimes I recommend to folks come in first and do a search on our industry tag. Let's say you're doing something in the sports realm. Okay, so 928 results, investors interested in sports and entertainment. But then clear that out and try a keyword search on that as well. So this is going to bring in 502 results, and there's probably some overlap between our tagging and the keyword, but I didn't see United Talent Agency in that initial results of the tag. So after you've kind of exhausted your search using industry tags, go and do a keyword search. And another powerful tactic is to combine like type of investor plus different keywords. The more time you spend kind of digging in, clicking through their websites and identifying the right person at the fund, making sure they actually invest in your industry, sector, and stage. Morgan Stanley Expansion Capital, this is going to be very late stage, right? It says it over here. So for most startups, these aren't going to be a good fit for you, right? These guys are writing big checks. So kind of tune into, does this investor do my type of deal? Industry, stage, sector, geography sometimes, all that good stuff. The more time you spend on that, the better. And the better your fundraising is going to go. All right, so we've talked about using the investor database to build your CRM. Now, just a few features about the CRM. Obviously, you can just move investors as you're making progress with each one. You've made some progress with Fuel Ventures. Let's say, let me just move them over here. Sent an email, you've got a contact to Fuel Ventures, move them over here after you send the pitch deck. So you're just moving them around your board as you're making progress. I already showed you this, but if you open up a card, here's where you can add details about that investor. If you just had a meeting with them, they say they typically write $100,000 checks, but it's your first meeting, you can add that data here and assign a probability to it, just to kind of reflect your potential commitments with a probability weighting. Here's where you can add contacts around that. Here's where you can add your notes, right? You just met them, add a little detail there. And then activities is kind of nice. So you just met them. They want your due diligence materials, or they want your financials, right? Add an activity, send financial docs, and then you can give it a date and you can push this out to the calendar of your choice. If you want to add this to your Google Calendar, this will create a reminder to send your financial docs on August 12th at, I guess that's probably midnight, right? That's what you do. So this is an easy way to add activities. Those activities you add will also show up on your dashboard. Email, I showed you this. You can connect your email, so it pulls in email threads. If you sent these guys a pitch deck or an attachment, you send them a term sheet, you can add that here. So this creates a record of all the activities around each investor. Right, I hope that makes sense. It's basically a single source of truth for all the context, notes, activities, emails, files, and then if you want to see the history, what went on. Maybe your co-founder's been working on Draper Nexus Ventures. You want to go see what he's been doing. You can see that there. All right, that is the CRM. That's the investor database. I know I'm going through a lot of stuff. Just a few other things here. If you want to sort your columns, this is kind of hidden, but you can sort your columns by a few criteria here. Maybe you like them alphabetically, maybe you like them something else. Also filters. If you've added data to the cards, like assigned owners to each card, right? Maybe you and your co-founder are dividing and conquering your investor target list, and you've assigned ownership to each investor, and you only want to see your cards. That's what you can do here. So a bunch of other things. You can sort, filter your board. I think that's enough on the CRM. Let me just get into the marketing stuff really quick. So pitch decks, investor updates, and the email tool are our general marketing things. I showed you how to use the Get Intro feature, which is by far the most powerful way to get intros to investors. It's a real statistic that warm intros are 30 times more effective than cold outreach. But if you're going to do cold email, my very favorite cold email is what we call the permission email. And you can find this under templates. So we have a small collection of email templates. This is the permission email. You can also create your own email templates if you'd like to build your own, right? If you find yourself emailing kind of the same general intro message or follow-up or nudge message to investors, create your own email template for that. But let's look at the permission email. So once again, if you're going to do any cold email, this is one of my very favorite. Basically, hi, investor name. You can drop in a personalization token here. Okay, so hi, Jim. I'm founder of, you drop your own stuff in here. Just type that in. So there's personalization tokens, so you can personalize these emails. This is a function if you're working on sending a batch of emails, for example. You can drop in stuff. But let's focus on the permission email for a second. Basically what this says is, I'm founder of XYZ. This is what we do. We make ABC. And then here's some exciting data point about the business. We're not raising money right now, but we plan to be, in Q4. We send out a short one-page company update or investor update detailing our progress. I would love to give you an early look at what we're building here at Foundersuite. May I have your permission to add you to our distribution list? So this is my very favorite cold email because it's not asking for money. It's not asking for time. You're simply asking them for permission to send you your monthly update. And little key phrases like early look or sneak peek are really powerful, right? How do investors become successful? They get into the best deals earlier than anyone else. Either they get into the very best deals or they get in earlier to good deals than other people. So you're kind of teasing that you have some interesting deal that, they might want to stay tuned on. You can attach files, pick investors to send this to, and then send this out, right? So that's that. The email tool is also useful for doing like follow-up emails. I mentioned this earlier, where maybe you just sent a pitch deck to 30 investors last week. Now you want to send a nudge email or follow-up email with a little bit of data, new news to those people you send a pitch deck to. You can select that column and send an email to those guys. So again, think of the send email tool as just doing intro emails, nudge emails, follow-ups in batches. Now, I showed you that permission email. What is a great way to follow up that permission email is to send out a monthly investor update. This is one of my very favorite kind of funding hacks of all time. This is what I call an investor update for prospective investors. And we have some investor update templates in the system you can start with. But look how short this is, right? It's very, very short. And that's a good thing. Shorter is better in fundraising in general. Intro emails, intro request emails, nudge emails. Shorter is always better in fundraising. Investors don't want to read stuff. They don't want to read 8 paragraphs of stuff from you. They want short, succinct things they can skim. You're pitching to an ADD audience. You need to like make everything really tight and condensed. We can talk about that more in the Q&A, but a mistake I see founders make all the time is they send too much information to investors. You really want to just send minimal. So this is our minimal viable update to prospective investors. Couple quick things here. A little bit about what you do, right? What do you do? This is going to be the same static section pretty much every time. Maybe you update your key metrics or something here. Then what happened? So first section, what do you do? Second section, what happened last month? What were the key wins along product releases, traction, maybe revenue if you have revenue yet, partnership deals, distribution, press, new hires, whatever. What are the key wins? Then again, what do you do in a visual? I tell people I was on a webinar with a group of life science companies last week, and some of them are doing really esoteric stuff. I'm like, I know it's hard, but take some visual image of what your product is and put it in here. Humans are visual nature. Humans are visual creatures, so you want to have a visual of what you do. And then the progress being made in terms of your metrics. You can create your own metrics here. And then what you're going to do next, right? What's coming up next month? New product releases, distribution deals, whatever it is. And then a visual of your team. So every update should have some image of your team, and that's all it is. Let me recap that really quick. What you do, the progress you're being made in terms of key wins, what you do in a visual of your product, the progress being made in terms of your KPIs, what you're going to be doing next, and then who you are. And this is the most powerful update. If you start to send this religiously to all the folks in your pipeline, I've seen deals get snapped up by investors because the founder has been nurturing those investors with a good, solid, regular monthly update. And, one of my favorite little tactics, fundraising, if you've listened to our funding hacks, you'll hear me say this, but let's say you're planning to raise capital, maybe a Series A, next February, right? February of 2026. You start building your target investor list now. You do the permission email, or you don't. You start sending your investor update to those target investors now. So you get August, September, October, November, December. Then in that January investor update, top of the update, you say, we're going to be kicking off our Series A next month. Let me know if you want early access to our pitch deck materials. And I've seen multiple startups, multiple customers of ours get their deals snapped up, almost instantly funded, because they've been nurturing those investor targets and prospects for several months. Really, really powerful. Not enough founders do this, so that's why I'm thumping the table on this. Okay, so a nice corollary to this is the pitch deck hosting tool. And this is very simple, right? You've got a pitch deck in a PowerPoint or PDF. You could always export your keynote to PDF, and then you upload it. And this is going to create an online version of that. Yeah, so here's this like funding hacks talk we did a little while ago. This is the online version of it. Looks nice, it's simple, it's fast. So once you've uploaded your pitch deck, there are a couple things you can do. You can either copy the URL, just click that, and that's going to copy that. And you can send out this in an email, either in our own tool, or if you can text it to someone, you could send it in LinkedIn, or you can do whatever you want. If you turn on this verify email and you send out this hyperlink to your deck, the recipient will be asked to enter their email to be able to view your deck. Now, this is not like super high security. They could put in a dummy email or a fake email, but in general, that hasn't been too much of an issue for folks. Generally, people do enter their email, right, if they're interested. So again, you can copy the URL, send it out using your own email, using your text, using WhatsApp, whatever. If you turn on this, it'll make them enter it, or you can send it out through our platform. And you would just click send, and that's going to open up basically the same editor that you saw with the email tool. Draft your message, pick your investors, and go, right? Very straightforward. If you send it through our system, we're going to track who you sent the email to, who opened that email, and then who opened the deck and how much time they spent on the deck. And you can kind of see viewing statistics around that too. So that's always kind of useful. Last but not least, we have a data room. So this is a $20 add-on. Data room is very simple, right? It's a folder structure, collection of folders. You can customize this any way you want. You set this up when you first come in here. You can add your own logo, company name, all that good stuff. But it's basically a collection of folders that you then populate with your more sensitive files, things like technology architecture, product roadmap, intellectual property, your financials, things like that. And then once you've built this, you can do a couple different things. You can invite investors into the entire data room, right? So if I want to give an investor access to the entire data room, I can do that here. Or I can give investors access just to specific folders. If I just want to invite investors into my pitch materials at this point, I can do that here. And you would enter their email, and you can designate what they can do. View only, view plus print plus download. Those are typically the main choices there. You probably would not do creator or collaborator. So you can kind of designate what they're allowed to do with your materials. And there's some analytics around that. So when investor comes in and views your materials or downloads it, you'll get a daily digest of that. I want to go on another little table thumping thing here. Why do I love data rooms so much? There are two reasons. One, set this up before you get too far along in your fundraise and populate it with all your files so that you're ready for due diligence. I tell this story all the time where I got a term sheet from an investor on a Friday. They sent me their due diligence list on a Monday. It was 200 items they wanted from me. My articles of incorporation, my financials, my historical financials, my forward-looking financials, market research, personal references, customer references, all that stuff. And it took me like 2 months to get all my due diligence materials together. And the deal started to slow down because it took so long. And I really thought because my due diligence was taking so long, the deal was going to fall apart. There was a real risk of that. Now, if I had a data room prepared when they sent me their due diligence list, I would have been able to just say, I've got all that stuff in my data room. Here's access. I'll invite you into my data room. Have at it. You'll find everything you need. That makes me look like a rock star to have a data room prepared in advance. And it makes due diligence go fast. And many deals die in due diligence. So there's reason number one to create a data room. Number two is you can use this as a forcing function. So let's say you're a couple weeks, maybe a month or two into your fundraise. You can go to everyone, let's say in your pitched column. Let's say you've got as far as, set up pitch meeting, right? All the folks in this column, all the folks that have not told you no yet, right? You can send them an email saying, hey, we're going to be opening up our data room August 15th through September 21st. If you are contemplating putting down a term sheet, let me know and I will invite you into our data room. I will give you access to our data room. And you're going to get people kind of ghost you or say, no, I'm not really interested. But if you get people raising their hand and say, yes, please invite me into your data room, that's a really strong signal, right? So you can use this as a forcing function. Before we're done, I'll just point out a few other things here. We have a founders market. This is on paid plans. It's a collection of some discounts, some deals. Some pretty good deals in here, though, if you're looking to use, Carta, Gusto, or Bench. These are often products we use ourselves or are popular products that startups use once they raise capital. So we've got some deals on there. We have some documents and templates. These are some downloadable things, some pitch decks, some financial models, things like that. And then our training center, blog, podcast, and YouTube. Just show you these. Here's our blog. There's some really good content here. Yes, I'm a little biased, but just some really solid stuff here. And also some nice little like investor lists. Venture firms open to cold pitches, BC glossary, questions to practice. We're really trying to be in the mind of the founder and help founders, right? So a lot of good stuff in here. Check it out. And then last but not least is we have this podcast called How I Raised It. You can find it on YouTube. I think we're at like 303 episodes or something like that. So it's a fire hose of content. But you can find it here if you want to go deeper into fundraising stuff. Also on iTunes. Okay, I think I have talked a lot here.